let me tell you about this match between Rodolfo Tan Cardoso and Bobby Fischer. In fact, let me go back to the intro screen. As you can see there, a picture of the young men. Keep in mind, a junior champion could be anyone as old as 21. So we have Ambassador Carlos P. Romulo of the Philippine Islands making the ceremonial first move. And then we have Morris Steinberg, vice president of the Manhattan Chess Club, Florencio Campomanes, and on the right, John Rhodes, the vice president of Pepsi-Cola, and they were hosting this little match. Now, if you're not familiar with the name Florencio Campomanes, you can count yourself fortunate, I suppose. Quite a corrupt individual. I'll let you Google him. Well, what we have here are the Filipino junior chess champion and the United States junior chess champion playing in an 8-game match. Now, what you may not know about Cardoso, besides the fact that he was Philippine champion in 1958 and 1963, but he also won the Asian Zonal Tournament in 57-58 to become an international master. He also became eligible to play in the Portoros Interzonal Tournament that year. He didn't do too well in the Interzonal, but his game against David Bronstein was a wonderful upset, and it actually kept Bronstein out of the candidates tournament for that year. But as wonderful a victory as it was, Cardoso actually regretted it because Bronstein was a big hero of his. Now there's a sportsman right there. Well, another thing you may not know about Rodolfo Cardoso, by the way, he passed away in 2013 at the age of 75, but it is Cardoso who first discovered Wesley So when Wesley So was but 9 years of age. Quite a discovery indeed. In game number 2, played the next day, we have another Sicilian with e4, c5, knight f3, d6, d4, same exact variation as game 1, only colors reversed. Pawn takes the pawn, knight takes the pawn, knight f6, and knight c3, a6, Najdorf's variation. But here, bishop to c4, Lipnitsky's attack. And as you know, depending on what black variation is being played will determine whether this is Lipnitsky's attack or Sozin's attack. On the classical or Scheveningen, it is Sozin's attack. On the Najdorf, it's Lipnitsky's attack, and that's named for Isaac Lipnitsky, who lived from June 25th, 1923 to March 25th, 1959. He did not live long, but he was a Soviet chess master and 2-time Ukrainian chess champion. He won that title in 1949 and 1956. And he was among Ukraine's top half-dozen players. e6 here, though, transposes to a Scheveningen, and as I just mentioned, when Scheveningen is played, bishop c4 is Sozin's attack. So this transposes to Sozin's attack, named for Benjamin Sozin, lived from 1896 to 1956, also a Soviet chess master, writer, and theoretician. White castles here, bishop e7. And now Bobby with bishop e3. Not the move that he came to play frequently once he really honed this opening. That move is bishop to b3. And that line is a book line, which continues with castles, f4, b5, e5. The pawns are traded, and the knight retreats to d7. Coming back, Bobby with bishop e3, and castles from black here. Now bishop b3, knight c6, and we transpose back to the book with f4. But Cardoso immediately vacates the book line again with knight a5, hitting the bishop The book line, of course, is knight takes the knight, and that continues with bishop takes the knight. After we get pawn b5, then we still have an e5 advance, but this time the pawn is supported by the bishop here. After pawn takes the pawn, and pawn takes the pawn, this knight retreats again to d7, hitting this, but defended by our bishop. So we can play knight to e4, coming to d6. If bishop to b7, which is the most common book move, knight to d6 is in fact played, creating a passed pawn after bishop takes knight and pawn takes bishop. But black does get some initiative, with queen g5 super attacking the magic square. And so white needs to lift his queen or rook to defend. I think the most common is rook f2. Let's go back. In this game, knight a5 is played from Rodolfo, queen f3, and queen c7. Pawn g4, knight takes the bishop. No surprise there. The only question was when he would play that move. After pawn takes knight, rook b8, d5 being preferred. g5 hits the knight, and the knight drops to d7. Here we have a very similar concept that I showed in game 1 with pawn to f5. Not really liked by the bot. I figure queen h5 is coming one way or the other, but the bot says play that right now. Probably because this does allow knight e5, which was played. Now, instead of queen h5, Bobby went with queen g3. I liked queen h5. King h8. Now things are getting a bit dicey on both sides. So knight f3 gets the big red X. Rook f4 being preferred. I will point out that you do not want to play this pawn to f6. That is answered by pawn takes the pawn, and then pawn takes the pawn is answered by rook g8. And of course, that's not going to be good. But knight f3 was Bobby's choice, and Cardoso trades the knights. I thought, just bring your bishop out and connect your rooks. The bot calling for b5 again. What does it think of this? I get an inaccuracy. Did get a double exclam earlier. Well, knight takes knight was played by Cardoso. Rook takes the knight, and now finally b5. But now that move is not liked by the bot. Pickle bot. Queen h4. Obviously, f6 still fails here, right? Even though here you might try bishop d4. Again, pawn takes isn't going to work for this reason. But if you try bishop d4, you might still play rook here, but then I can play rook takes pawn here. Double exclam! Double exclam! Second double exclam of the day. We don't want to take with the bishop, which is just leading to a move something like this. But the point of taking with the rook is that you're opening this path to the king. So e5 would have to be played to prevent the discovered attack. But the point is, I can now play rook takes the pawn. I'm not going to play knight d5, even though that hits the queen, because he can actually give up the queen because this piece relationship still exists. And I get a double exclam for that. What's going on, ladles and jelly spoons? That's 3 double exclams in a single evening. So anyway, after e5, we could play rook takes the pawn. Now, if bishop to e6 hitting my rook, I can then sacrifice the rook right here. Double exclam! Double exclam! My brain hurts. Double exclam. That's 4. Well, the point is now I've saved my game and can force a repetition. He has to move here or here, doesn't matter which, and then we just go back and forth, forcing him back and forth. Come back. Wow. I think that's a record. Anyway, queen h4 by Bobby Fischer. Pawn takes pawn. Pawn takes pawn. Well, the point here is now he is threatening f6, but the bot not liking it. Knight to d5 being preferred here, hitting the queen. Yeah, sure. That would compel something like queen to d8, and then I can take this pawn. Well, even though he can take... No, I've got this. Yeah, no, I'm winning either way now. Back, 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 back. He takes f5, was played right away. Queen c6. Yeah, at some point that does seem to be the idea, doesn't it? I might play knight e4 here. He played rook af1. He doubled his rooks. The bot didn't like that, neither did the eval bar. Well, you have this now. You cannot allow... It terminally pins the rook, doesn't it? That would be checkmate. So bishop d4 was tried here. It says play queen h5 first. And then if b4 hitting my knight, I can actually ignore it and play bishop d4. Double exclam! Double exclam! That's number 5. That's number 5. That is number 5. Note that you don't want to play g6 here with this threat, because after pawn takes and pawn takes, renewing the threat, h6, actually, I might be able to sack here. But look at the eval bars favoring black. It's just too slow, and this is still lingering, and this is still pinned. Yeah, it's getting ugly for white here. You could try this. I get a star for it. What does black do about this threat of checkmate? He'd have to give check. He forks the king and the queen, forcing a queen trade, doesn't he? And then he's winning. Black is. Come back. Bishop d4. And now the pawn is pushed. Bot not liking that either. Calling for rook g8. I like b4. I don't understand rook g8. How's rook g8 better than b4? I'm not sure. To me, b4, I don't understand why that's getting a red X. That makes... In fact, the eval bar likes b4 better than it likes... Look, I don't understand. That's the Ficklebot's preferred move, but doesn't that just give me a corridor checkmate? Oh my goodness, that's a corridor checkmate. What in the world is Ficklebot talking about? Hey, what in the world is the bot talking about? How does it miss mate in 2? I'm confused. I don't understand that. I'm changing this to a star because the eval bar is giving us 0.6 or 0.7. And 0.7, when you weigh them out, 0.7 is definitely better than being mated in 2 moves. And bishop takes the pawn on g6. King takes the bishop. Queen h6, check. In here, too, much worse is the pawn move. I mean, bishop takes, and you could probably queen h6, check. You don't want to play this. Let's be clear on that. You do not want to play that, and then after king h8, you have the same problem as before. But queen h6 here, and after king h8, I can take the bishop with check. And that will buy me enough time to make my knight safe, I suppose. But black is fine here. In fact, he probably can grab this pawn. Anyway, queen h6 check right there. King h8, pawn g6, and black must defend precisely. The only move is to take the pawn, and therefore queen c5 check is a blunder. Now, yeah, the only move is pawn takes pawn, and after pawn takes pawn, obviously white is threatening checkmate, so you have to give up your rook here. Double exclam number 7. Oh, yeah. Oh, note this is still pinned to the G2 square, so you can't take that here. You have to take that. And therefore, the super attacker is removed. We blockade this right here. Man, epic night. Epic night for me. I can't believe this. 7 double exclams in one evening so far. Right, well, this check is blocked by the rook on f1. Pawn takes pawn is now played. That's too late. Pawn takes pawn, and queen g5 check forces queen takes queen. But this rook is no longer pinned. So after bishop takes queen, rook takes rook, rook takes the rook, we get rook takes the rook. And after king to g7, I love this move. You might expect rook f7 forking the king and the bishop, right? But pawn takes the pawn. Now, why doesn't that get a double exclam? That was an awesome move right there. And the obvious point is you can't take the rook without allowing a queen. And if you take the pawn, well, then, of course, the fork is still available. And you go on to win that.